Hi, I'm Chelsea Myers, and in this video, I'm going to be going through my technology action plan. So, we're going to go through the top three tech tools that I found from this course, how I plan to integrate those into my everyday professional experience, and then how I will try to structure teaching media literacy. So, a couple things just about me. I work as a mathematics teacher in a high school in Everett High specifically, um, and that's where I'm kind of basing my experience from. The top three tech tools that I found from this course are Canvas, Kahoot, and Pair Assessment. Um, so when I look at how I want to actually integrate these technology tools, Canva is the first technology tool that I found to be extremely useful. I personally have been very used to teaching using PowerPoint, and so Canva was similar, but I appreciated that it had kind of a bigger format for templates, the ability to, as a teacher, use this in other ways that will benefit my classroom. And so I thought of a few different ways that I can integrate this specifically into my classroom. One way is as more of a meet the teacher experience for at the start of the year when we do conferences. The second use that I found that I know I can use in my classroom is everyday lessons. Planning a lesson, creating visual representations, setting up different types of problems, and putting it basically on our panel that we have in our classroom set up so students can visually see the things that we are talking about and use it really as a presentation tool. The other option that I found is using it as a resource for students. And when I say using it as a resource for students, I'm thinking about all the other diverse ways that Canva can be used. And so one of those ways that I found is the ability to make posters or to make anchor charts for my students. And so I have a lot of ML students or students with learning disabilities that I have in my classrooms just based on my population for my students. And so Canva having the ability to kind of make and design posters that I can then go print and have those posted during the different units that we go into. So example might be linear equations and having things to identify slope, different types of equations, the base formulas, and things that students can look around the room and then refer back to. I thought Canva would be a great use for that. On top of teaching students how to use Canva, and how they could use it for themselves. The second option was Kahoot. So this technology tool is something that I found is going to be extremely useful in my own classroom. As a math teacher myself, I have used it for formative assessments. I've also used it for review activities. And I think that it's really unique in the fact that we can do more individualized practice with it. So you don't have to have the competitive game-like mode that most of us are familiar with. And so, as far as my actual classroom, I think Kahoot would be this sense of informal, quick, formative assessments, checking in on seeing students. So I've used it specifically for when we test out linear equations. So if I'm teaching algebra, can students identify slope, y-intercept? Can they tell me if this slope is increasing or decreasing? Quick multiple choice questions, true, false questions. I've used it in my Algebra 2 classes with statistics, right? Asking students to identify mean, normal distribution, even doing calculations. So I give students whiteboards to work on while they use the Kahoot. And so I really use it as a tool to help, one, engage students, two, to assess students on current material, how they're doing. It's a really good indicator to see if students are doing really well and answering the questions really well, or if students are not. I think that this tool is great because it usually gets close to, if not all, of the students engaged in the learning, which is kind of the goal in a mathematics classroom. Um, But I also think that this works really well for diverse learners. So I have some students that a game, like a competitive mode, is not going to be the best kind of um, experience for them. And so having the ability to make it more of an individual practice or assessment where I can get rid of the timers, get rid of the time crunch that could cause anxiety for students, that is a super helpful tool for me. And the final one that I found personally, this from this course is pair assessment, formerly known as Edulastic, I believe. But pair assessment, along with like Pair Deck and other tools within that learning kind of format or platform, I think is going to be super useful. So this is one that I actually created my assessment on through this course. And I loved it. I loved looking at the different opportunities that we have in this room, or in this platform. And so one of the things that I want to utilize this specifically for in my own classroom is pre-assessments. I think that this being able to create an assessment or pre-assessment in this case that is specifically targeting standards. So standards that maybe students need to know or really are foundational for the concepts that we're moving into, or if I really need to assess are students advanced. And so I think this tool would give me a lot of that capabilities. And so I'm thinking of really integrating this as a pre-assessment tool, having students go on and scaffold questions so that students who can demonstrate certain levels of understanding, I know going into that unit where I need to differentiate my instruction. How do I need to differentiate? Do I need to review for students that are behind? Are my students more on track? Can I push them and be more advanced? Do I have a huge gap between students that are on the lower end and students that are on that higher end? And is that going to create a situation where I need to do more differentiated instruction? And so I think using this as a pre-assessment will just really help get kind of those target areas that I need as a teacher. I also think that it's great for tracking progress. So tracking progress from where students started at the beginning of a unit to the end of unit and really seeing that student growth, focusing on kind of those standards or other aspects that I need students to understand and really just tracking their own individual progress and not so much just on the standards. I think will be what I'm going to utilize it the most for. I also think that it's just great for, again, exit tickets, formative assessments, but more formal assessments rather than Kahoot, which is more informal. I think pair assessment is a great tool for a more formal assessment. I could also use this as an end of unit assessment. We are very used to doing pen and paper in math, but I do think there is a benefit to using technology in this way, especially since a lot of our SBA, state testing, SAT, are now going on to technology as well. So kind of giving them an assessment in a technology format where they maybe have to still do scratch paper work, but still ultimately answer using a computer, I think would also give them some of those digital media like skills that they're going to need going forward. Overall, my plan going forward, this course has been amazing in teaching so many different models and methods to how I can integrate technology, to how I can integrate media literacy, and making sure that my students develop that even in a mathematics classroom. I think something I struggled with was realizing how connected literacy skills are in mathematics. And so my plan is to think about using the SAMR model and really focusing on those last two tiers. I think I've done a lot more substitution and augmentation in my own classroom as of current situations. And I really think I want to look into applying more of that modification, redefinition aspect. Um, So my ideas going forward are to really integrate and think about what types of projects can I integrate with my students. I liked the rubric tools that we were able to explore during this course. So really being able to make rubrics that are focused on standards-based grading rather than a point system. Using the collaboration tools. So I've already started using with my team some of the collaboration tools we talked about during this course, using some technology tools for helping with planning. Um, Definitely assessment. Assessment is my big one. That is where I plan on using a lot more of these technology tools like Padlet to integrate more collaboration with my students, to have them utilize um, a way of kind of hearing more voices without maybe classroom participation. It's just a new format that can really help them see how technology can transcend their learning themselves. But that's kind of my plan. As far as media literacy goes, for my own students, there's a couple different ways that I've thought about integrating and really focusing on exploring media literacy in my own classroom. So I think media literacy is a really important skill for students to gain, especially in our prominent technology-filled society that we have right now. One way I think about using media literacy and like exploring that aspect in my math classroom is this idea of math projects. And so something that I've thought about really reflected on is providing students opportunities to find real articles, videos, social media posts that have claims regarding mathematics. So examples like that could be climate change data. It could be the inflation. It could be tuition costs that are increasing. It could be sports statistics, right? Something that maybe interests the students that also relates to mathematical content that we are learning, and then to integrate that into media literacy. So to really have the students identify um, where the information is coming from, who's providing the information. Is that information biased? Could it be misleading? Is it meant to persuade or influence people that are consuming that information? And really have them narrow in onto those concepts while also exploring specifically math-related content. Um, I think that it explores not only those math topics, but it prevents students from just taking information that they get online at face value. They really have to do some critical thinking and analyzing skills, which is another reason why I think real world applications are super important for students. So again, teaching students mathematical concepts that relate to real world situations. So an example is thinking about in Algebra 2, we have exponential functions that we talk about, and having students understanding growth factors, scaling, how that relates to other functions and things, but really using that as an opportunity instead of using a generic mold question that most curriculums have, um, pulling that back into more real world situations. So maybe that's exploring the situation with COVID and how there was a lot of data and information regarding the different changes and fluctuations that were happening, and a lot of graphs get provided, right? We talk about increases in climate change, and they produce data, and really talking to the students about how scaling, how the data is presented in those graphs, how that could potentially be misleading or change how someone maybe views a specific subject or content. So I think just really having this idea with media literacy, students exploring mathematical content ideas while also gaining an understanding and an appreciation for the need to critically think through where information is coming from, who is providing that information, and what is the purpose of that information in that way. And so I think that those are my two ideas for how I can start to develop media literacy kind of lessons into my curriculum and classroom. And that is my action plan. Thank you for watching.